Sometimes it's really hard to work out what's going on in the body. The biggest thing I feel like the lifters need to kind of work out is what the weakness is. And sometimes you might get symptoms in one part of the body, but that's not where the cause is. The cause is somewhere upstream or downstream or something like this. It's kind of like a big puzzle that needs kind of organizing and working out. So a large portion of our time should be spent working out what is the weakness and how do we address that weakness. And so sometimes, you think to yourself, okay, I have this issue, I'm going to do this, and you implement that idea, but then you don't really kind of address that issue. So after a little while, you kind of bounce around with all these ideas, and then eventually, if you persist, you will come to some sort of understanding of what's going on. For me, because I train every day, I have a lot of these opportunities to kind of implement ideas and kind of work on my craft. So I've got a lot of kind of data set points, if you will, to try and work out what's going on. This back pump issue has been kind of happening with me for the last sort of month. It kind of started around the time where I hit the 210 kilo PR squat. And then after that, it was kind of coming on and off. And so I kind of stopped the frequency of the pin squats to some degree. And I was noticing that, every time I would come back to pin squats, the issue was kind of arising again. And so then I thought, okay, let's address the psoas curls and all of that. And they kind of worked really well. Yesterday, I thought to myself, okay, let's train back, lower back specifically. So let's hit the thing directly. So in my mind, in my experience, a lot of stuff in medicine, a lot of stuff in physiology, anatomy, it's never kind of straightforward. Like if you have shoulder pain, it could be shoulder pain related, but it could be something else. There's a lot of referred pain. You see it all the time. People have heart attacks and they've got just a neck pain, or they have like a jaw pain. I've triaged people that just complain of a jaw pain and they're having a myocardial infarction or a heart attack. So there's a lot of different kind of pathways the nerves travel. And so sometimes it's not straightforward. And when it comes to weightlifting, you have a lower back pump. One would think, okay, you have a weak back, train the back. But then I did psoas curls and I did ab work and my back pump went away. So it's kind of like a balancing thing there. Even though the symptoms are all at the back, the issue is at the front. So last few days I was thinking, okay, let me just try doing these back extensions. What if, let's try having a hypothesis that my lower back is weak. Is that a fair hypothesis? Well, it could be fair because my pulling to pushing for the lower body is very skewed. I squat every single day. So I'm pushing like 10-1 when it comes to pulling. For me, notoriously, pulling has always been kind of like a very expensive endeavor, if you will. I've spoken about this in the past. For some reason, my body does not take too well to frequent deadlifting, frequent rowing, frequent anything. Other than pull-ups, I can't really recover with all the other stuff. Squatting for me is just not a big deal. Like I can basically do 5 sets of 5 almost every day and think nothing of it. Whether that's just a experience thing or just exposure thing, like I've done squatting so much that my body just kind of built a callus for squatting and you can just take it. I'm not sure. But there's this issue of, is my lower back weak? Even though the psoas curls and the ab work has kind of helped, the idea is, it's probably a good hypothesis to think that, okay, your lower back is weak because you don't really do anything for your lower back. And so yesterday and today, I decided to just do a lot of back extensions or these hypers. Yesterday, I did 5 sets of 20 and I was limping around for like a good 5-10 minutes. It was only until like the 3rd or 4th plate on the pin squats that the thing started dissipating and feeling good. Went through all my workout, felt quite good. Squatting, surprisingly, went all right once the back pump subsided. And it was weird because it subsided in an exercise where usually that exercise would bring it on. So the pin squats cured my lower back pumps. So that was interesting. Went home, made the video, spoke to you guys yesterday, and then this morning I woke up and I thought, okay, I don't feel too bad. I feel my hamstrings ever so slightly, and I thought, I want to have another go, but this time I want to go hypers straight into back squats. I did 5 sets of 20 again, and yes, it was a nasty back pump again. It was a freaking workout and a half. I could have gone home at that point, but I persisted and I thought, let me just ride this out and see if my back can take it. If the back is going to kind of, the pump is going to dissipate a little bit. And fair enough, as you're seeing here, the bar 60, 100 kilos, I had a back pump. I don't know whether you guys can see it, but I was feeling it. Like, the lower back was just on my map, and all I was thinking is, man, I'm pumped. But I was hoping that it would just kind of go away, and it did. It did again. So it's interesting. But even though the back pump was there, my squatting felt really good. I had trouble controlling the butt wink, and I had trouble kind of maintaining even pressure throughout the foot. I think on this video, see my right foot especially cave in a little bit, and my butt wink. That's because my lower back is just so freaking pumped. I just wasn't be able to, I couldn't feel it, I couldn't control it. Having that said, it felt good. I think when I get to around the third plate, I started really relaxing and I started really feeling good about the squat. So I think I want to do hyperextensions every day. The way they make me feel after the back pump subsides is really, really good. There's something about them. The 180 squat today and the 200 squat today felt like I could get my hips underneath the bar. Really, really weird. I have a bit of a hypothesis or a bit of an idea why that is. And it's got to do with pre-exhaustion. If you are a posterior chain dominant lifter and you want to hit your anterior core a little bit more, kind of like me, that's kind of what I'm talking about. I think it serves well to come in and do your posterior chain first, pre-fatigue that sucker, completely take it out of the game, and then when you go to squatting, your body's like, well, we can't trust this posterior chain business because it's so fatigued. Let's start loading the anterior chain. And your fascia, which is like this crazy network of like connective tissue, it's kind of like it plays you, man. I reckon the squatting felt good for me because the body was like, we need to use our anterior chain more to get this squat up. So the 180 for me felt very vertical under the bar, and with my eyes, when I watched the video, it feels very, very vertical. I could get my hips underneath the bar. And I think that's because I pre-exhausted my freaking posterior chain, especially the lower back, and my body was kind of like protecting the lower back by maintaining that upright posture. Because we know the more upright you are, the less posterior chain is involved, and the more anterior chain is involved, i.e. the quads and the abs and whatnot. So pay attention to this. I don't even know if you guys can be able to see this, but I definitely felt much more upright during these later squat sets. By this time, my lower back pump has kind of dissipated completely, and I was feeling just the after effects were positive. So there was no back pump. I was feeling upright, and I was feeling my quads, which was really, really interesting. So this, I don't know if this is a method. I don't know if this is, I know bodybuilders use this all the time to kind of target different muscles, weak muscles, exhaust them, and then move on. In my case, I've done the reverse. I've pre-exhausted I think, it's hard to know, but I've pre-exhausted my strong points. I feel like because the way I squat, my posterior chain is much more dominant. I'm a hip dominant lifter. I went in, I did 5 sets of 20 of the freaking hypers, pretty much exhausted my lower back, and all of a sudden I'm squatting more upright because my body cannot take that pressure onto the lower back because it's pre-exhausted. Anyway, it's really interesting to me to kind of talk about exercise order, exercise selection, because I think there's a flow with these things. There's almost like a back to front kind of orientation. What I mean by that is you start with kind of back orientated movements, like posterior chain stuff, like a hyper. And then as the session progresses, you become more and more anterior. So you go from hyper extensions to back squats to front squats, and then you go home. I even thought to myself, why don't I do like a front to back kind of thing, where I start with psoas curls, move to front squats, move to back squats, and then do hypers. I think today's kind of recipe, and pay attention to this 200, to me, this felt really, really good. It felt really upright. It felt really in the quads. I don't know whether you guys can see this. It felt really good. See, I'm not collapsing at the thoracic anymore. It's so damn interesting. I find this stuff so damn freaking interesting. So depending on who you are, depending on where your dominance is, for me, I am posterior chain dominant. So my exercise order needs to be back to front, meaning I pre-exhaust the stuff that I'm good at, which is the back, And as the session moves on, I'm selecting more and more kind of front-orientated exercises. So like I said, hypers, back squat, front squat, and then home. Or like psoas curls or something like this, like really anterior core stuff. If you are, let's say, if you are front dominant or anterior chain dominant, you could start with the front stuff, right? So you start with the opposite to me. So you start with psoas curls, you go into front squats. Those two exercises will exhaust the front of you. And then when you get to the back squats, you're going to want to kind of lean over a little bit because that's all you have left in reserve. So anyway, I don't know if this is an accurate way of thinking about things, but I'm just trying to kind of analyze and conceptualize what was going on with me, because I definitely felt more upright. I definitely felt this bias towards my quads today. And I think the only thing I changed was this idea of let's pre-exhaust the back, which is interesting because, your intuition would be the other way around, right? But I don't know. Anyway, the front squatting felt good as well. Everything felt freaking good. Even though I did, hyperextensions yesterday, I did hyperextensions today. So I was so happy with how the session went today that I ended up going back to hyperextensions after my front squatting, and I ended up doing 3 sets of 5. Now, that's probably asking for trouble. That's probably asking for a whole bunch of DOMs tomorrow, and I'm kind of expecting it already. We know the kind of DOMs settle in 48 hours after the fact. So yesterday's session, I'm not really feeling the effects of that today. So potentially tomorrow and the next day, I might be in a world of hurt. But I was just so freaking happy with how the session went and how my body alignment kind of went that I just wanted more of it. So that's kind of what was going through my head throughout the workout. See, that looks to me so upright. Oh man, I don't know. Sometimes I do these reps and sets and I'm like, this feels a certain way. This time around, I was like, man, I feel so upright. I literally feel like I'm more upright. I don't have to look up as much. I don't have to fight the bar as much. I'm just start more upright and I stay more upright and I just finish the lift more upright. So it's interesting. It's interesting how these things work. And you just kind of, I always had this intuition for years on end now that there is a very important issue of exercise order. There needs to be a very deliberate way of structuring a workout. Periodization, if you will. Periodizing your actual session, not like weeks on end. There is a way. So basically, a lot of you guys say to me, what do you think for reps and sets? What do you think I should do, this and that? I think everyone's individual. So, for what I did here, you might have to do the opposite. You might have to go front to back. I went back to front, but you might have to do something else. You just basically have to sit down with a pen and paper and write down what you think, after existing or living with your body for a while and training for a while, what you think your weaknesses are. Make a list and then plan accordingly. And also I'll probably make another column where you think the strengths are. So if you want to employ the same stuff, the same kind of methodology that I did for this workout, start with the stuff that works, that are strong, exhaust those suckers. And then when you get to the squats, when you get to the main movements, you can kind of lay into the stuff because you've kind of, in a way, pre-exhausted the strong stuff. And because your strong stuff is pre-exhausted, all of a sudden your weak stuff and your strong stuff is on the same level because you pre-exhausted the strong stuff. So that's kind of how I'm thinking about this. I don't know whether this makes sense to you guys, but there's no other way I can kind of conceptualize what's happened today and yesterday. I thought yesterday was kind of, it's a normal exercise. That's why I kind of feel good. No, today I felt good again. I felt more upright. So I think there's something to that. You would think to yourself, like bodybuilders, if you have a weak body part, attack that first. And you can do that. If you're bodybuilding, you can do that. But if you want to get good at squatting and become more upright in a squat and you are posterior chain dominant, smash the hell out of the posterior chain and then get back to this thing. And all of a sudden, your body can't rely on the strong stuff anymore. I feel like I'm talking in circles, but I really want to emphasize my thoughts on this because it feels like I'm onto something with this, man. It just feels, it feels good. So all these previous weeks of me smashing the hell out of the anterior chain, I was getting good relief, but it wasn't I was feeling as good for my back squat as these 2 freaking days have felt. And And that kind of makes me think, if you want to do a deadlift session, maybe start with the anterior stuff, start front to back. Yeah, so whatever the purpose of that session is, or whatever your sets of weaknesses and strengths, you need to think very carefully about the structure of your workout, because it's all like a seesaw thing between, the joints. So every joint has like a primary and a secondary kind of muscle, stabilizing muscle. There's all sorts of things going on. So if you want to deadlift stronger, you need to make sure that the antagonist muscles involved in the deadlift are also primed. You can't just go, I'm going to activate my glutes and then I'm going to go deadlift. Well, you're doing 2-0 there. There's 2 points to one side, 0 to the other. You kind of need to, keep score of what you're doing to each kind of side of the joint. That's kind of the best way I can explain what I'm thinking right now. I'm going to continue to doing this. Last 2 days I felt really, really good, and when that happens, when my body's telling me something like this, I have to follow through with it. That doesn't mean that I'm not going to do psoas curls anymore, hang leg raises. I think definitely they have a place. But it's interesting. It's so interesting how these things work. So I'm going to see how I feel tomorrow. If I wake up in a world of hurt, then I just do some leg raises, and I'll see how that kind of impacts the session. But these last 2 days, like I said, it's interesting, man. I've felt really, really good. So I just wonder if at that time where I did the 210 kilo, when the PR, and when all those back pumps started happening, I wonder if I just plugged the hyper extensions in then, whether I could have continued that momentum on. Anyway, something to think about. There's always something to freaking think about in this game. It's just one big ass puzzle, and the pieces are always changing. The puzzle's always growing. It's always evolving, and you have to kind of stay up with the game and kind of keep track. And if you don't have an understanding of what's happening, then you're just freaking shooting in the dark. This is why I think you need to kind of think about this actively. Some people just fall into it and they just have freaking, set of genetics and everything works. But some of us, for whatever reason, we need to kind of be more cerebral and think about what's going on. All right, guys. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace out.